I'm Phil Harris from the Jax Ranger Show. This is the MLR Championship Shield, and you're watching Let Freedom Ring, baby. Woo! Huzzah!
Welcome to Let Freedom Ring. Hope everybody's having a great week. I gotta say the days are getting longer. We're getting through winter. I'm really excited about that because we are moving into rugby season, Major League Rugby season, and I have on the show today Phil Harris.
Good to see you.
And Dave McVey of the Jax Ranger Show. Two outriders. I help out with the show too, but great to have you guys on the show today.
Happy to be here, man. Once again, I think it's my fifth appearance or something like that.
You're getting up there in numbers of guests. Bobby Bollier obviously holds the record. He likes to talk about that a lot, especially when he's on the show.
Right.
But there's been a lot. But how you been? It's been, I think you were on right after, maybe a week or two after the Free Jacks won the Shield.
Yep.
Real big. We were all really excited about that.
Back in July, yeah.
But how you been since?
Hanging in there. You know, I'm really riding the wave of that win still. That's one of it's always in the back of my mind that they won the championship. So yeah, that makes everything a little bit easier get through the winter.
And we had posted, we actually shared the Jax Rangers post on Let Freedom Ring, the new tattoo.
Yeah, man.
So you were a man of your word.
That's right.
And got that, so super
It
excited.
looks pretty good, too. I went to the same tattoo artist that Dave got his Free Jacks tattoo. So
That's
yeah.
right.
Yep.
Awesome. Now, I want to put Dave in the hot seat here for a minute.
Right.
We have, when you come on the show for the first time, we always have 3 questions we ask every guest.
Okay.
So Dave, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in East Tennessee and grew up mostly in Kansas.
Okay.
So family moved out there. That's where I was in like elementary school, middle school. So it's kind of feels like home. I still have family out there in Kansas and Nebraska. But I moved to New England, Connecticut when I was a teenager, and I've been in New England ever since. So lived more of my life in Connecticut and Massachusetts than anywhere else, but grew up out in Kansas.
Nice. All right. Now, what are 3 things that everybody should know about you?
My family is just incredibly important to me. My wife, Becky, is my rock, and my daughters, Abby and Cora, are my sun and stars. Like, just everything I do, just trying to make them proud. Another thing, I love games of all kinds, board games, video games, role-playing games. I really just enjoy gaming, big gamer. And a third thing, I love rugby. I played a lot of sports growing up. I played every sport I had the chance to play when I was a kid, and some I wish I had a chance. There's not much hockey in Kansas. I'm always like, man, I would have loved hockey. That seems like a great sport. But I found rugby when I was like 20, and I've been a player since then. I've been a coach, referee, and it's just something. And now just a huge Free Jacks fan. So it's been a big part of my life. Like a lot of people, it became a major cornerstone of my personality. A lot of American rugby players in particular, there's a little bit of a chip on your shoulder sometimes. And for me, it really ended up being something that was really important in my life. Not just something I enjoyed, but it's been formative. I've grown as a person because of commitments I've made and work I've put into things like running clubs and coaching. And I've derived just an amazing amount of enjoyment from the sport in the last couple decades.
Awesome. Now, would you say that then, I know it's Phil's favorite sport. Would you say rugby's your favorite sport?
Yeah, far and away. I mean, there's not even a second. For participation, easily, definitely. I do like some other sports. I like baseball. For me, baseball is like a radio sport. Yeah. I love baseball on the radio while you're doing other stuff or driving. But rugby's definitely number one.
Awesome. Now, I got to ask the money question. Show's Let Freedom Ring. I ask everybody this. Sticking with the theme of the show, I forgot to even say that. I love saying that line. What does it mean to you to be an American?
To me, there's nothing particularly special about having to happen to have been born in America and be an American, right? Or to be naturalized. But I do think that America is pretty unique, right? And there's proven to be something really sturdy about American democracy It's proven to be able to change and adapt as the world has changed, and our understanding of things like right and wrong has changed since the country was founded. And I think that's kind of the central genius of America, is that it was a system built with the mechanisms in place to change that system when it became necessary. And that's pretty cool. You know, in a lot of ways, it's like a race that's been running, and it's the oldest car in the race. Like, it's the oldest democracy that's around. And there's a lot of parts that have been replaced, and somehow we've done all that work while it has been running the whole time. So to me, that's what's unique. That's what's special about America.
I really like that answer.
Same.
Because sometimes it's really tough for people to answer. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have, like, the specifics.
Right.
Freedom.
Right.
And I get it. And that's not on anybody. It's, that's what people usually go to. But that's a really good explanation of kind of the how-to, almost,
Well, I was a history major, so this
Okay.
this
Perfect.
question's
Yeah, that makes a
near
lot of
and
sense.
dear to my heart. You know,
Yeah.
and one thing that I really came to appreciate when I was studying history is, like, American history is everybody's history. Like, I feel like all Americans own all American history. You know, like, Black history is something that I care about and am excited about. You know, the same way I'm excited about the, Pilgrims landing and founding Plymouth and why that was important, and the effects that had. And so that's another thing that I think is uniquely American, is that we have managed to make America for everybody, right? And we've expanded who it is. It's a democracy, meaning, the people who hold power are the voters. But who that is, that group, the voters, has changed dramatically, right?
Yes,
That is pretty cool to me.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I like that. Yeah, it's a constantly evolving country. It really is.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about this because we're about to get in, and Phil, you've done a really good job with the show in the off season. I know it's hard to have a rugby podcast about a team that's not playing in the off season.
Somehow we managed.
Yeah.
Now, I got to ask this because I have two questions, and you may have talked about this before on the show, but I'm trying to remember how the Jacks Rangers show start. But I also want to know how Dave got involved, because I assumed you guys were friends before the Free Jacks, and I don't think that's the case. So
It's not.
No.
So this is what happened. Back in April of 2021, we were all watching the Free Jacks get beat away to DC. It was the last time that we lost to DC. And everybody was so upset with the second half. The Free Jacks didn't play well. I mean, it's one of those things where, that first year and a half, not count COVID year and then plus that season afterwards, the Free Jacks were just kind of finding themselves, right? So we were kind of all upset with that performance. And I got on the Facebook group, actually, the main one, and was talking oh, this isn't Free Jacks rugby, all this other stuff. So I commented about that, and it got a bunch of comments after that, people replying to it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I love sports podcasts. One of my best friends does one that's now SEC. The whole SEC does it now. But it used to just be South Carolina specific sports. And I would call in on his daily show and talk about rugby. And these people are looking to talk about college football. And I'm talking about rugby. So somebody in the comments on the YouTube was like, he should just start his own rugby podcast. And I was like, that's not going to happen. But then a couple weeks later, it all came together. And I was like, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to figure it out. Because once it got in my mind, I couldn't sleep at night. I was writing down these frantically writing down sticky notes of ideas of what I wanted to do. And Dave was also doing rugby educational videos. This is how this happens, all this sort of other stuff. And you were posting on the Free Jacks group about those, and also you had a song.
That's
the
true.
Free Jacks
Ho.
Yep.
Yeah.
So from there, I was like, oh, this guy is the guy that does the video. So I reached out to him. I was like, listen, I'm doing this rugby podcast. And his response immediately was I don't have time, but I'll try to come on only and just provide my analysis, right?
Yeah, I think my first response was, I really appreciate the invitation, but I don't think I have time to make that kind of commitment.
Right.
And you said, don't worry about it. Just come on the show.
I'll do everything.
Yeah, you literally said, I'll do everything else. And I'm how do you turn that opportunity down? It's
and he didn't know me from anybody. I just happened to see his post and put it together oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's got all this rugby experience. And I have rugby experience. I can tell you what the difference between a knock-on and a drop goal, right? I played the game. But his is an extra level that I don't necessarily have. So I wanted to bring somebody in that had that coaching experience, all that sort of stuff, that is a little bit different than my experience just as a player back in the day and being a fan. So it really works. Like the dynamic is awesome. Like I'm feel good RFC. Like I'm all about like passion and emotion and that. And he's all like X's and O's with regard to rugby. So it really works out pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you were kind of hesitant at first and, eased into that?
Yeah, I had been making videos for like a YouTube channel, which was, like Phil said, like kind of educational videos.
Yeah.
Rugby's got a number of complicated areas, right? And in particular, there are things that you see sometimes that just don't make any sense if you don't know the intricacies of what's going on. It's kind of comparable to seeing a flag thrown in an NFL game and being like, what on earth is that for?
Yeah.
And so I made some videos just explaining a few aspects of that and trying to highlight things that the Free Jacks were doing well, so that fans, casual fans especially, who were tuning in, kind of know what they were looking at. Jerry Remy wrote a book called Watching Baseball years and years ago that is a short, phenomenal read. And it literally tells you how to watch baseball. It's like, look at this. Watch the second baseman. It means this when they do this. Keep an eye out for this. Watch these sorts of things in pitch counts as they progress. Just really good advice for anybody who doesn't have a background so they can understand the game at a greater depth, because I think that provides a lot of enjoyment. And so I really kind of was thinking in that vein, like, okay, how can I explain things to casual fans so that they don't just know what happened in this video, but the next time they see it, they know what's going on. They know what each team is trying to do, and they know why it worked or didn't work. One of the first videos I put out was a video about not contesting a maul in a line out. So the team brings the ball down in a line out where both teams line up, lift players in the air to try to get the ball when it's thrown back into the field of play, right? From what in rugby we call in touch, which means out of bounds. So it's thrown from touch back into play, and you lift guys up and you try to bring the ball down to your team, and then you might all kind of form a mass and ram into the other team, and they try to push back, and that's called a maul. But the team might just try not to let you form a maul. You need both teams for it to form, and you're really close together, so it's usually really easy. But the team might back up or slide out. And so I had examples of teams trying to do that, both the Free Jacks doing it successfully and unsuccessfully. It's kind of a clever trick. It's almost like a trick play, a defensive trick play. And so it doesn't make any sense. It's like a lot of trick plays. You're like, what is going on? People are just moving in weird directions. So that's just an example, like the kind of content I was trying to create, because I really enjoy that. Like I like explaining things. I work in education. Like it's something that just gets me excited. It's fun. So that's kind of my angle. And on the show, I spend a lot of time and energy saying, well, let me talk about this thing and what they might have been trying to do and why they would have maybe been doing this. And it looked bad, but actually,
Yeah, and he does a really great job of that in the reviews and the previews of the games that we do. So we're getting into close to the start of the MLR season. So every single week we're going to be talking about the opponent. And then the week after that, we're going to be talking about the game that took place and then the next opponent. So Dave really reviews the game and tells you exactly what took place. And those special moments in the game, and he'll give you explanations and stuff like that. And I'm just there to kind of like push the buttons and like get us through everything and throw in a little bit of personality as well.
No, I think that's really important. So I played for 2 years, and I still you see me at games and feel what I'm, because it can be complicated.
Yeah.
And that's great to have someone that knows it. And Bozo, to his credit, I mean, when I watched the championship game with him and he called the whole game, I'm sitting there going, I don't know how he's doing this.
Bozo's sneaky good with that stuff too. He's very knowledgeable about the game of rugby. He was also a referee too, so and a coach. Yeah, he's doing.
And he played at a higher level than I ever played. He played at Mystic. He was a very good player.
Very good player.
He played at the best club in New England. So Bozo's got his bona fides.
For sure, he's like a big time troll, and we're gonna get into that later on. But he knows what he's talking about for sure.
He definitely does, and. He's a small school national champion.
That's true.
I left the team that year. Oh. So I am not part of that.
Interesting.
And I supported them, but I wasn't.
Of course.
I was not there for that.
I did not know that.
So
wow, how about that?
We'll get into Bozo because there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
I gotta ask this though, and this question has kind of come to my mind.
Okay.
I say it with you all the time, at the end of your show, huzzah. I'm at games saying huzzah. Dave has the huzzah sign.
Yep.
Who gets credit for starting all that?
I mean, I did at first. Like, if you look far back enough in one of the Facebook posts, you will see that I said something along the lines, if you're not huzzahing at the after a try, you're doing it wrong. And then we kind of ran with that, and Dave made the sign.
Yeah.
So Dave, executed it with the whole sign thing, but I think I was the one that came up with the idea of doing huzzah after a try.
Yeah, I think the topic was like the kind of the team branding, right? Like
yeah.
this. What is a free jack? What is the aesthetic the team's looking for?
Yep.
Colonial New England,
Yes.
thinking back to like, okay, the American Revolution,
Right.
revolutionary spirit. A free jack has multiple meanings. A free laborer is one of the things the team talks about. Also, naval flags are called jacks.
Yep.
So, the jack of a free ship. And huzzah was, a colonial expression of excitement,
Joy,
or approval or
Yep.
joy, right? So Phil was like, yeah, huzzahs after every try. And I said, I'm making a sign. I'm going to show up in every home match. We've had the huzzah sign. We've done huzzahs after every try that the Free Jacks have ever scored
And the only
at a
game
home match.
he wasn't at, I was able to do it, and it was only one try that I
Yeah,
had
that's
to do.
true.
So,
I've only missed one huzzah in all the history.
It's great because it's catchy. I never even. This is the first time I've even asked the origin story of this. But like as soon as I started getting into it, I heard it once, heard it twice ago. I'm writing posts saying like huzzah after,
It's
and
fun
I was like,
to say, right? Yeah.
You need that. Everybody knows I love gimmicks.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody knows that. So I
You're
love
Mr.
it.
Gimmick. Yeah.
I want to ask this. So I want to ask about what happened on the show the other day, but I want to say this first. Sometimes, with content, we get there's some content that's made that some people take as lighthearted.
Yep.
I generally see it as lighthearted. Maybe some people don't.
Yep.
Some people take it as, a meaner underlying thing to that.
Sure.
Now, in the world of social media, I've learned not to take anything too seriously on Facebook. Or
Probably for the
on
best.
anything.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Because we put out, even today there was a post about DC copying the Free Jacks with the uniforms. So some people comment, sometimes they're angry. How do you kind of deal with that? And is that even, are you trying to upset people, you think, or is it lighthearted?
It's lighthearted because, like, with me as a Free Jacks fan, like, you want me as a fan of your team. But when I'm not, if I'm a fan of one team, I don't like the other ones for the most part. Like, there's some that I'm kind of okay with, and there's some that we're legitimate rivals with. So I will poke fun at our rivals or just any other team in MLR. Like, we equally, and this is me by myself and Bozo as well. Dave doesn't even get involved in this. He's like the voice of reason, the grown-up in the group. But I like to, I love comedy. I love laughing. I love, and I like to take that aspect and the branding of the show. It's very lighthearted to a certain extent with the Jacks Ranger show. We'll throw some, analytical stuff at you. We'll throw all of that. But we also we don't like to take ourselves too seriously. So one of the ways that I like to do that is just to present it in a funny way. Now, some people will say, how dare they, make fun of other teams or whatever. And my response to that is like, lighten up, man. You know what I mean? Like, this is all just for fun. It is what it is. So
it's entertainment.
Sports
is entertainment.
Sports is entertainment for sure.
It definitely is, and I've at times pushed back on like some things where I thought like that seems mean.
Yeah.
Not just teasing, but mean. And we've talked about like it's a creative choice, like
Right.
what you're gonna do, right? And
100%.
and it is a young league.
Yes.
There are things that you can do. I'm on the show, openly a fan of the league. I'm excited about other teams. Not just the Free Jacks. Obviously, a Free Jacks fan
Right.
first and foremost. If you watch the show, there's no mistake.
Yeah.
But I also talk up other teams. I get excited about players on other teams,
Right.
player moves, interesting things. And so I get, I think, the point. Of like, hey, shouldn't we be fans of the league? Shouldn't we be building everybody up? But, I think what you're saying, Phil, is really astute. That like you're going to make a post about them having the same kind of almost identical jerseys in practice, right?
For sure.
And one thing that I've come to think is like, making a joke out of it, calling them the color scheme thieves are at it again, right? Like it's funny.
Yeah.
And it's way preferable to treating it like it's a real problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it was, this is, the 8th time they've done this and we need to have a league meeting and blah, blah, that would bother me a lot more. Acting like this is, something that's a major concern.
Right.
But lighthearted, poking fun at things like that is, I think it's a good way to handle it.
It's just a part of sports. It's trash talk to a certain extent, and the rivalries exist, you know what I mean? And it's not always let's shake hands and, pat ourselves on the back after the game and stuff like that. It's legitimately a part of the sports culture in this country. And that's another thing that needs to be embraced more than it already is with regard to growing this thing, because it's not just going to be us fill in the stands and expecting this thing to grow. We need more people that are involved in other sports that care about other interests and stuff like that to come into the fold. And what do those people immediately understand? They immediately understand rivalry and trash talk, because that is a part of just American sports landscape.
No, I totally agree. And the other thing too is when fans come from other, the DC fans came for the Eastern Conference Championship. Mm-hmm. No one was yelling at them. Everybody was having a good time.
Of course.
So I think some people do take social media too serious.
Right.
And I kind of want to get into this. So at the end of the last Jack's Rangers show, you had the Seawolves podcast on.
That's right.
And is Matt the host of the show?
Yes, he's the creative director, if you will.
Creative director. And so Matt kind of took some liberties with Bozo.
Yeah.
Just kind of want to talk about that, and I kind of want to address kind of how I felt about it and how I kind of see it. But what's going through your mind as it kind of goes off? It's one of those if it was wrestling, it would be he went into business for himself type of thing.
Yes.
How did you kind of feel about that?
I mean, if you watch it, you can see that I'm smirking at certain points as he's just kind of trying to body Bozo. Essentially just. It felt personal at certain points. And by the way, this is not something that we talked about prior to. There was no mention of I'm going to, lay this guy out, digitally speaking. So, my immediate thought was Bozo's always in the comments. He's always, if he's not on the show, he's in the comments saying something. So I immediately wanted to go see if he was going to respond. And at the same time, I was just like, this is interesting. I don't really know how to proceed with this. And thankfully, Nick, who does Rucky, the mascot, immediately changed subjects.
Yeah.
So it was interesting for sure. Surprised that was not something that was brought up prior to the show getting started.
Well, Matt calls it a haymaker,
yeah.
right? At the very beginning, he says,
yeah.
I'm going to throw a haymaker. I mean, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
so,
he knew what he's doing.
Like I said, I can understand some of the points he was trying to make about you can take a different tack that's going to build up more teams. I do think it's important not to get personal with people, especially in comments and things like that. A post from the team is one thing. Going out hunting for people to pick fights with is different. But at the end of the day, what Matt tried to do was go after Bozo, Chris, personally, and then hide behind but it's not personal.
Yeah.
You can't say a few of the things. I don't know what language is allowed here versus on a podcast, but a couple of the things he said, I'm not going to say on television. Yeah. You can't do that and then say, but it's not personal. I love you, man.
Yeah.
And so that feels disingenuous. And so
to
me, I think part of the strong reaction is that's a little two-faced.
Yeah, to be honest, I like the controversy. Everybody knows that. I'm telling Phil, you got to run with this. I want to see this story more than Roman versus Cody.
Yeah. I'm not going to put that out as a clip because, it's just, it felt personal. And I was just that's not really something that we want to throw out there into the world like that.
I think it was some of the delivery is, I'm that guy, and I'm going to be the guy that calls him out. And then saying he talks, we can say the S word here, but he's he talks mad shit, and it's well.
Yeah. Well, he called him a shit show clown.
Yes, that's where
that's just a personal insult.
Now Bozo does go by Bozo.
He does go by Bozo.
Sure.
But yeah, it was really. Listen, there's been things Bozo said that he's rattled me before about the Patriots and stuff, but I've known Chris for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's
just who he is, man. He's that way.
I just thought, it is what it is. I don't know. I mean, I think there's entertainment value to it.
I
but,
will
like,
say this about Matt. Like, if you know, you see him post stuff about his involvement in the community there in Seattle, like, it will blow you away how he's trying to grow the game within his region and then really across the country, because he goes to like all of these away games. He's just him and his wife, Jennifer, great people, like very gregarious, just love to talk. They love to be around people, kind of different than me. But, you know, he's got an edge to him. Like, I picked up on that right away. Like, he let me stay
like
at his
Dana
house.
White a little bit.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I don't know his backstory very well, but like, he does have an edge to him for sure. So
That's a good gimmick.
it is.
You know, I gotta say though, the one thing he kind of said, like he said, you know, if you want to do that in the NFL, sure. And I took it as the point he was trying to make is like they're $1 billion industry, like you can trash talk. You know, I've had people really angry send me stuff about football stuff. I'm like, dude, we're not players on the team. Calm down. You know, like, but he said, you know, this is something they said was this a startup company, and. What else to say? The startup company, and he said it wasn't really part of rugby culture. I agree that sometimes I think I did not like anything said about New York and Toronto folding, because I was kind of heartbroken about that myself.
Right.
Grave dancing.
Grave dancing. Bozo's very good at that. And
Yeah.
for me, it was like, it's obviously a sad day when that takes place, because there's a human element to this. Like, these guys are out of a job, and the staff as well are out of a job. That sucks, 100%. So doing that, like, but Bozo's approach, and he talked about this on the show on one of the episodes, he was like, I'm not going to, you know, sugarcoat a situation where they ultimately failed, right? Like, New York had like 4 different venues in 3 years. They went through 3 rebrands. Like, they just couldn't get enough people through the door, so they executed poorly. And what happens when that takes place? The money eventually runs out. Like, it sucks, but I kind of understand where he's coming from with that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, honestly, like, it is what it is. I mean, we're talking about, you know, sports, you know, and I think if you got the two together, I think that could be worked out. And you know what? People have come on this show and done things like that, and I've been caught off guard. And I was they weren't saying about me, but somebody else, and I was like, oh man, why are we doing this?
Right.
You know, so it does happen. But I will say about Bozo, I've known Chris Lind since, I said 20 years, probably more like 16 years.
Yeah.
I never would have gone to an alumni game for Plymouth State because I didn't like the way things ended there. It wasn't personal. I was never going to go until Chris approached me and asked me to go. And I said, you know what? So I have to say, just in his defense, he is a great human being. He's not the person you always see on Facebook, and he is playing a game and he's teasing, and it is what it is. So I wouldn't call him an S show clown. He is a good human being.
For sure.
Yeah, I want to ask this too, because, and I'm not saying this is even Matt or anybody, but when we talk about rugby elitists, and I think we have that in softball too. Oh, I won't play in that league because, you know, they use this kind of ball.
Right.
What exactly is a rugby elitist? And
I might have come up with that term. I don't know if that's true or not, but I might have come up with that term. The way I define it is like, there's these people, because rugby in this country and a lot of other places around the world, it's like it's an upper class. Most people find it in college. There's just a bit of like snobbery involved in rugby. And you will find it at every level. And the way that I describe it in a rugby elitist is somebody that thinks that rugby is a superior sport based on the culture and things that have been built up. And I embrace some aspects of the culture, like I do. I love the game. I love the respect aspect of it. And that might sound surprising because I talk a lot of shit. But like, after the game's over, like, they break bread together, the players do. Like, it's a small family. It's a niche thing in this country. So, yeah, ultimately, man, like, I feel like there's some people that turn their nose up to even the concept of, you know, rivalry or shit talking or embracing the American sports landscape and having rugby come into that fold, as opposed to them saying, look at rugby, we're on a pedestal, we're so much better than everybody else, and that's why you should embrace it, you peasant type of atmosphere.
I can give an example.
Go for it.
being silent for kicks, right? So in many countries, rugby is a very international game,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And it has an elitist reputation internationally. Rugby is a school in England that the sport originated from back when all of the private schools, confusingly called public schools, because anyone can go to them as long as you can pay, a ton of money. They all had their own ball sports, field sports with their own rules, right? Eton, rugby, all those schools in England. And rugby's rules became popularized. Graduates went on to continue playing after they got out. They tended to be, dentists, lawyers in London. So those were the people who were playing. They were the upper class. So it always had that connotation. The schism between rugby union and rugby league happened over whether players, miners, like down under the ground mining, could be paid for missed wages when they played on a day they were supposed to work, because otherwise they couldn't keep playing because they had to work to feed their families. There's real class struggle in the history of rugby, and that is part of why there's this reputation around rugby elitism. And there is a strong culture that came from that background for things like being silent for kicks. Right? So while the opposing team is kicking, a whole stadium full of thousands of people will be totally silent out of respect for the kicker so that they can kick. But that's not actually true in every rugby playing country. It's only true in some of them. So when Americans say something like, we have to be silent for the kick because it is part of rugby culture and it's just ironclad, and if you don't do it, you're denigrating the sport and you're dragging it down into the ditch. And then the silent part is often like, with the other American sports. Because what they really like is that it feels different. It feels foreign. They like that element. And I get it. I'm quiet for kicks. I like that. But not everybody is.
But I'm not going to scold somebody if they're yelling. I'm not going to do that.
And that's the sort of thing that, a couple years ago, the Utah mascot drove a mini bike across the field.
I think it was a motorcycle, technically.
Was it a full-size motorcycle?
It's a Harley Davidson.
Across the field during a kick. People lost their minds.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, that's so, and that's over the line. You can't drive a motorized vehicle across the field during the kick. But it was funny. It was funny. It got a lot of press.
Did he miss the kick?
I actually don't know.
I think he missed the kick. So, yeah.
Yeah. But it's that kind of thing. So the rugby elitism is that sort of like, no, it can never change.
Right.
I've talked to kickers. We've had kickers on the show, and I've posed this question to them out of curiosity. Does it matter? Do you care if people make noise? And I get every kicker is gonna say, oh, no, it doesn't matter, even if it bothers them. You're never going to go on TV and say, oh, this thing really bothers me when I'm trying to do this important thing at my job. People are going to do it more. But, I think it's a genuine answer. These guys don't care. They don't even notice.
They don't care.
There's this pretense that we're doing it for the players and out of respect for them. And, that's not really true. No. It's because we don't want things to change, or we have a feeling about what it means to be a certain thing. And I do think that's off-putting.
Yeah.
If you lecture a new fan,
you got to put butts in the seats.
Now
100%.
you can educate people. One of my good friends at work is now a season ticket holder. Wes, he's a championship-winning football coach in Massachusetts. Great guy, loves rugby, and all the composure he has to have as a coach, he gets to vent as a fan.
He treats it like it's a WWE show.
He really does. He yells. The coaches love him. He's popular. He's loud. He's funny. And he chirps. He'll chirp at the players, and he was chirping at referees, as is pretty traditional in America.
Yes.
Referees are fair game. And in rugby, the referee is addressed as sir or ma'am. Only the captain is allowed to talk to the referee. That's not 100% really. It's only the captain is allowed to appeal to the referee about the laws. Other players, usually it's okay to have a word here and there if people aren't crazy. But there are rules around how you treat the referee. The referee is the sole judge of law and fact on a rugby field. It's a really difficult job, and out of respect for how difficult it is for one referee with two assistants and maybe somebody else, and the assistants might be from the teams that are playing, not exactly honest, to keep everybody, not in the MLR, but in club rugby and other levels, to keep 30 players playing within the laws of a very physical game is a challenge. And so there's respect for that referee built into the sport that isn't present in every sport. And, I said to my friend, hey, it's really funny, but like anything that insults the referee is not okay. Yeah. You're going to, like, that's just not part of the culture. So, I mean, I myself have made these culture arguments, but I think we need to be really careful as American rugby fans and evangelists that we're not making these arguments in a way that's pushing new fans away. And, Wes thanked me. He's like, I really appreciate that you took the time to tell me about this and not just, to say, hey, you got to knock it off. Like, we had a really good conversation. And he still chirps, and he even talks about the refereeing, but he doesn't chirp at the referees. He's totally changed the way that he approaches that particular part of the game, penalties, and what's called and what's not. So there's arguments to be made on both sides.
So a rugby elitist will talk down to someone.
Tone is everything.
100%.
When you're trying to get a point across.
Yep.
You don't
want to be off-putting because we need these people, right? That are discovering rugby on TV and saying, "What is this? There's a club near me. There's a team. I need to go see them." We want to welcome those people and not turn them away because we can't turn them away. Financially speaking, the league will never exist.
Yeah, you got to put butts in the seats, so it makes it difficult. It's funny you bring up the sir thing because I got people in softball doing that with umpires.
Really?
Every time there's a call I don't like, I go, "Oh, sir!" And now everybody does it.
Nice.
And that's a rugby thing. No, it's really good, and like I said, I think you gotta have a mix of tradition and new tradition, and you gotta put butts in the seats.
Yep.
And you're not gonna like everybody there. I've been sat near people that I'm like.
Yep.
And I just move on.
Yep.
Fan questions though.
Okay.
Chris Lynn, controversy, love it. I'm here for it. So.
We know how he feels.
Yeah.
He likes.
He's generally the starter of it, so I'm not surprised with that comment.
Huzzah, boys, from Frank Pack. I think
that guy's awesome, man. He made a full-size lantern.
Oh, that's the guy?
That's the guy. He's the lantern guy. Yeah, really great support.
I got to get a picture with that.
Yep. Great ranger.
Broccoli guy.
Love that.
Using his real name.
Yep.
Jim Stewart Allen.
That's him.
You have to wear that romper when I come east in April.
So I guess it was like the 80s festival last time. That romper's gone. Let me pull back the curtains here a little bit. I get rid of all of that stuff. I'm a serial donator.
You have so many outfits for
I
these
do,
games.
but they all go away, and then I have to buy new ones for the next year. So there's somebody in Manchester, like a homeless guy, walking around with that romper on right now. But yeah, like I'll definitely dress up every single festival. And hopefully more fans do that as well. I want to see more people like embracing the theme. Yeah, hopefully we'll get that next year.
Yeah, Broccoli guy, and he, I guess he is kind of a Seattle legend because you
can
find him.
He's at all games,
rugby games.
Like every game that's out there, he's there, man.
Mariners never win it. Just gonna tell you that, Broccoli guy. Going into the 2024 season. Go through these kind of quick, but how's the team look? How are we thinking?
Really good. I mean, super strong. Like, we're stacked at every single position. If you look at all of the position groups, you can probably stack them up against like the top teams in the league, and we're going to be there or thereabouts with the talent level and the depth. So I expect big things out of the Free Jacks once again this year.
Yeah, whenever you win a championship, you want to keep everybody, right? Because you're like, if this team won it all, this is the team I want next year. And, there's truth in that, and there's, some error in there too. But there's more truth than error. And the Free Jacks, Tom Kindly, the GM, has managed to keep something like 60-something% of the roster, which is very high. There's a lot of turnover in these teams for a lot of reasons. So that's a very high number. A lot of players are coming back who just won the league last year, and that's exciting. And they're important players.
Yeah.
The players who are coming in are also very exciting. You have guys like Martin Segrin, who is the captain of the Chilean national team
at the World Cup.
At the recent World Cup. And they became like everybody's second team because of the passion they played with. Not just passion, but the results. I mean, they were standing up and trading blows with teams that were a whole tier above them theoretically and in the rankings, right? And he is the captain of the team. He's the culture leader of that team, and he is on the Free Jacks this season. There's really been some important additions.
Yeah. Possible new fan favorite coming in here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which I want to talk about another my all-time favorite Free Jack, because Waka got me hooked.
Yeah.
Just seeing the things he could do. He's not coming back.
Right. Well, we say that, right?
Yeah.
Like, who knows what might happen before the end of the season?
And I want to talk about this because you want to talk about us making new traditions. We went and met him at the airport. Because to us, if you're a real big fan of the team, that was big that he was coming back.
Yeah, I mean, he was a superstar the year before. He won the MVP of the whole league. It was the award that he received. So, yeah.
How do you guys feel? So, how do you feel about him departure? And we didn't really get to see much of him.
Right.
In this last season.
I mean, it would have been a different scenario, like if, Jason Potters came in and wasn't a good fit or something like that, or we're searching for that 10 to this day. But, Jason Potters came in and absolutely
MVP.
blew everybody away. He won the MVP. We lost the MVP, and then we gained an MVP.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, like, I love his creativeness on the ball, his offensive-minded, just balls to the wall approach to rugby. I love that from Waka. But, it's one of those things where, like, it sucks that he's gone, but he's chasing that money, man, and you can't blame him for that.
No. I'm not saying he's old, but he's 30.
He's getting up
got to
there.
get those big contracts.
Absolutely.
And there's not a lot of money in rugby internationally.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's a few leagues that pay pretty well, but it's difficult to become a professional rugby player who's making, an amount of money that's going to get you by any amount of time after your career ends, right? And there are for him to be able to pursue one of those few opportunities that there is out there. I don't think anybody wishes him anything but the best.
Absolutely.
It's always great to see a rugby player whose career is continuing and progressing. So
there's only a couple of players in the world that make more than $1 million every year.
Yeah.
And like professional sports fans will hear that and say, what? But that's just the way rugby is, man.
And I agree. And I think, to Matt's point on the show, that's why I think, like, when he is talking about, like, the NFL, like, saying stuff to, not everybody in the NFL is a millionaire, but most of them are. It is a little bit different when guys are, like, they're not getting paid millions of dollars to be out there. I think some of the players might only make, $15,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
the books aren't really open.
Yes,
I think
they're not that transparent. But yeah, like
it's-
between 15 and 30, I would say is probably the sweet spot for 6 months out of the year for them to get paid. Yeah.
So that was just one point that I did understand him coming from. These aren't millionaires.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do we think the Free Jacks will finish, and what teams are going to surprise everybody?
I think the Free Jacks will finish top of the East, and we will make the playoffs. And my minimum expectation is to make the Final Four, so the semifinals. As long as we get there, I think that will be a successful year for us. And I think Miami in the Eastern Conference, even though they're a brand new squad, I think they're going to surprise some people. They're going to beat some teams that they have no business beating as a brand new franchise in the league.
Yeah, I agree. I think top of the East for sure. It's a better conference for us to be in terms of strength of schedule, meaning like we should finish with a better record than we maybe would if we were in that Western Conference, where there's just some heavy hitters.
It's a meat grinder over there.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's a bad place to be a small guy.
Exactly, yeah.
But once we get to the playoffs, it's hard to guarantee anything at that point. You don't know who you're going to play. You don't know who you're going to have. Once you're talking about winning individual games to progress, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I do think we're going to win the East. I think we're going to be in a really good position going into the playoffs. Yeah. It's a broad playoff field. Yeah. It's a big playoff system. I would guess the thinking is hopefully we can keep this same playoff system moving forward as we add
the East having the Eastern
as we add
Conference
teams.
Game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of teams in the playoffs, which means having a high seed will be valuable because you'll be playing not a 4 seed but like a 6 seed. And that's good. The bigger gap you can get, the better it's going to be for you in terms of, your performance in that match, but also like player health and everything else. It's so critical once you get into the off season.
I gotta say, like, I was nervous about the championship until they actually won it. Like, I didn't believe they were going to win it.
Same.
I just thought that the West, it always has that reputation of being a little bit superior to the East, and then for them to beat San Diego the way they did was just like that game. If you were an average person that you flip, because people did tell me that was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope enough eyes were on it to see the league continue to grow.
I agree, man. When I saw San Diego doing synchronized jumping jacks to warm up, I was like, oh, man, we're in trouble.
Big intimidation factor. Synchronized calisthenics.
For me, it was just like, I'm so glad that we made the final. This is a great team that we're facing off against. And my whole thing was like, I was so nervous throughout the game, but also like I felt a little distant from it because I felt like there was a good possibility that we were not going to win. So I hated living that way in that moment, but that's the way that I was trying to protect myself. So when we won, it almost felt surreal in my mind.
Yeah.
It felt like a dream.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I've got to see all my teams win.
Nice.
So I'm a happy guy.
It's pretty crazy. I was there with my whole family was out there in Chicago. It was phenomenal. And trying to explain to a 10-year-old that like this is probably not going to happen again in your life, like a team that you're a big fan of, getting to a championship, you being able to go, them winning the championship, like that's stars aligning stuff, you know, and it was a really special experience to get to be there.
And you have such an interaction that you with the MLR players that you can't have in the sports that are making billions of dollars because it's like I've had conversations with a lot of these players.
Right.
And you interview them almost weekly, you know, so it's like it hits even more home that you kind of know these guys a little bit and they want it, you know.
I mean, this is a situation where we're at the very, very beginning of a league, 7 years in, so the access is just something that you would never see in the regular American sports landscape. Like, who's talking to Tom Brady after a game on the field at Gillette Stadium? Unless you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Or you're his family. That's not going to happen. But we do that every single week at Fort Quincy in Quincy, Massachusetts.
Yeah, the match ends. They open up the field to families and fans, everybody.
Yeah.
You go on out there. They've had concerts out there. You can, which is free with your ticket. You know, you just get a concert after the show. Hang out. Kids are running around, tackling each other, kicking around rugby balls, and then here out of the locker rooms, here walks both teams. Both teams' coaches, often the owners. Right? Everybody, literally everybody who's there. They all come out on the field. They hang out. Sign autographs if you come up and talk. They're talking to each other. They're talking to fans. It's just socializing. That's what happens after every rugby game. If people don't know, after a rugby match, the home team is expected to host the visitors for what we call a drink up. And you go usually to a bar, but not always. Maybe if you're in college, you're not allowed to. And
I snuck into one.
But you give food. You're expected to provide a meal to the visiting team. It's an important part of tradition. It's part of that respect. It's those rugby values. These are parts of rugby values that I think are awesome. This is fantastic. So players then they go into a tent. They're literally doing that. Like they're feeding both teams. They're eating. They're coming back out. It's really, really incredible, and you make connections with players. You know, you get to meet people, and then when they win the championship, you know, Connor Keys is walking over here saying hi to, I assume, his family. I don't know, people in the stands right after they win. He looks up, I look at him, I point. You know, you get the thumbs up. It's really cool when somebody who you have a connection with wins something that meaningful.
I got a winner's medal.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
So, I mean, Q, one of our favorite Free Jacks of all time, Andrew Quatrin, who watches the show religiously, comes up to me and puts a winner's medal around my neck and said, "Phil, you deserve this." And I broke down crying.
My brother texted me, he goes, "Yo, Phil got a medal." I was like, "Yeah, he did."
Yeah, how about that?
I've asked Phil this question many times. I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Why should someone be a fan of the MLR?
Rugby is the most exciting sport you can watch. As much as we talked about how complicated it is earlier, it makes a lot of sense. Watching somebody hit a gap and, you know, drop it into fifth gear and burn somebody is universal. Watching somebody smash a dude with the ball is universal. When you see a big hit, you know what you just saw. And there's lots of big hits. When you see somebody falling down, make an incredible, you know, Brett Favre at his best, you know, offload, and they do that 6 times in one match, you know what you saw. You saw something that you can't do. It's incredible. So rugby's an amazing sport. Why is MLR great? It's a young league. You have access to players and coaches that you really can't get in any other kind of professional sports league. The sport attracts people who want to work hard and, you know, achieve what they can honestly. It pushes humility. The Free Jacks in particular really push humility, which means that, like, you're talking to people who want to talk to you. They care. They care about the fans. They care about the community. It's a pretty unique opportunity to be a fan of a league that cares about its fans that much. So I would say to anybody, come on down to Quincy, take in a match, home openers coming up in a couple weeks, second weekend in March. Like, let's get rolling. Come down, watch the Free Jacks beat the bag out of DC, the color scheme thieves. Stole our red, white, and blue uniforms.
That's right, those jerks.
You're gonna have a good time. It's an amazing experience,
and it's not gonna break the bank either. Like, that's something that people need to understand. Like, you can get tickets for like $20 essentially, something along those lines, and food is not outrageously priced. I went to the Providence Bruins, not the big Bruins, the baby Bruins, and I spent $16 for a beer. $16. Like, you're not going to experience that at Fort Quincy. It's $5 for a beer.
Yeah, it's definitely affordable entertainment for the family.
100%.
Real quick, I was going to ask Todd, we're kind of a little short on time, but outside of winning the championship, what has been your favorite moment of the New England Free Jacks so far?
I think the Eastern Conference Final is one that I'm sure Dave might mention, so I'm going to go even further back than that. I'm going to go to the Fort Union Point days. This might have been before your time.
Yeah.
We played New York. It was a rain delay. There was some thunder in the area. They had all of the fans under one big tent. Tammy, who used to work for the club, gave me a microphone and was like, do something. So I did the Free Jacks Ho, and I was just like making up songs. Awesome bonding moment for all of like the OG fans. And then we get out there and the Free Jacks are ready to go, and New York walks out from those player tents. Back then they were changing in tents. There was no locker rooms.
On gravel.
New York just looked like they didn't want to be there. And eventually, like 60 minutes in, the Free Jacks put a little bit of distance between the two teams and won that game. And it was a special moment. It was a galvanizing moment for the fan base, for sure.
Yeah. The first moment that came to my mind is not a Free Jacks high, but is something that was kind of hilarious, and that's the Eastern Conference Final, where New York defeated the Free Jacks a couple years ago.
Yep.
And it happened. Nothing ever hinges on one call; it's a whole match. But it happened that toward the end there was a missed call on foul play. Not just missed call, but like a nasty high tackle that just didn't get called. Real apparent to every fan in the stands kind of stuff. And because there had been a penalty against the Free Jacks earlier, that penalty didn't matter. I believe, I'd have to check the law book, but I believe foul play, you don't get away with foul play because somebody committed penalty earlier than that. But anyway, it was very acrimonious. The match ended with some pretty sour feelings toward New York, who had just won, and as they hoisted the trophy that they won, it literally fell apart in their hands.
Oh no!
And you don't get anything much more poetic.
Poetic justice, right there, baby.
It was quite a moment, and it kind of changed the vibe. But like everybody
100%.
went from like to like, laughing at these guys. It kind of helped you move on. Yep. You can't change it. You're not going to go back and get a different call. So the only thing you can do is build a bridge and get over it. And it kind of helped to watch them, trying to put I was taking pictures as they're like trying to figure out how to put the trophy back together. Hilarious. And then, man, what a turning point. Now we're champions. They don't exist anymore. Not
Incredible
to dance on graves, but I mean, that's quite we've come a long way since
we sure
there.
Have, yep.
And I'll just throw in, I don't think rugby in New York is done. I don't think rugby in Canada is done. Major League Rugby, New York City is the feather in the cap of American sports.
Absolutely.
You want a team in New York City. The rumor is that, there are people who even were interested in buying, but just couldn't get it together in time for this season. So I think New York will come back down the road,
They'll be back.
And Canada will 100% be back down the road. People don't know, Canada has a strong history as a rugby country, better than the United States. They used to be one of the better teams, not the best, but kind of at the top of the second tier, and they could slug it out, kind of like Chile I was talking about in the last World Cup. They were respected in that way, where like you couldn't take a match against them for granted. So rugby's serious business in Canada, and the rugby will be back in Canada in the MLR.
Looks like Vancouver was going to get a team. Like, they're already messing around with like semi-professional status right now. They're called the Highlanders, and they're putting together their team to play, I guess, like other amateur clubs. But we might want to watch them because they could be the next Canadian club coming about.
That'd be awesome.
I agree.
So I want to keep seeing it grow. My favorite moment's still going to be when Waka had that kick at the St. Patrick's Day game.
Oh, yes.
It turned into a try because I brought a bunch of people with me that didn't know rugby, and they were like,
Awesome, right?
I can't believe I just saw that, and that just always that highlight reel just replays and replays. I want to get into buy or sell. There's been a lot of controversy about the new team, Anthem Rugby Carolina. We buy or sell that name?
Sell.
The name.
The name.
Sell. 100%.
Just the name. Well, your reason is that it starts with A. Is that right? Is that the biggest?
Yes, that's the biggest thing.
I think they did some good marketing research and found a theme, anthem, right? The national anthem that is clever, but they didn't realize that Atlanta, right down the road, is the biggest rival.
Yeah. and their logo's literally an A. Like that would be like a team in Boston using NY as their logo. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's terrible, terrible.
Yeah, I didn't like it because it just reminds me of health insurance. That was really like my own.
Healthcare RFC.
That's
what
an
I'm going to call them.
association nobody
as well.
wants to have for their brand.
Every time I go to the doctor, I'm pulling out that card, and I'm
Yeah.
like, Anthem, I just don't think of that as a mascot. But I'm very excited for this team to exist.
Yeah, the team
Same.
itself. That's why I hesitated because I don't want to neg on them. I'm very excited they exist. I'm going to be an Anthem fan this season. I'm going to be talking about them.
Rick Collins.
My boy.
What do they call themselves?
The Jackal's Den.
The Jackal's Den.
Yeah.
Rick is. I think I find him interesting.
I do too.
Buy or sell his version of the podcast.
Love it, man. Buying that all the way. Like, Rick is one of those, like, I love all of the correspondents that come on the show. They're all awesome people. But I think, like, me and Rick would, like, get along really, really well outside of just rugby in general. He's a really, really cool guy. I love what he does with his podcast. Pretty similar to us, but, that's kind of the norm with MLR fan shows. But they do a great job. By the way, the team's not very good, and they're not very supportive of their fan base. At least that's my understanding of it. So it's kind of a tough situation for them to be in as fans over there in Dallas.
Yeah, he's slogging it out in the trenches as
No doubt.
as a show host for a team, for Dallas. So
if you're a fan of the Dallas
him.
Jackals, like you're not a bandwagon guy at all.
Yeah.
My favorite thing that I saw with Rick was at the game where he went to the beer tent, came back with a bunch of beers. He's like, we could never do this in Dallas. Like, you really can't do that here. I don't know how that.
Yeah. Only in Quincy. Yeah, only at Veterans Memorial Stadium.
Last one, because we're short on time, but Tom Kindly, the GM.
The biggest sell of all time. Or excuse me, the biggest buy of all time. Oh, gosh. I almost
Don't leave, Tom.
I almost did a heel turn there. Yeah. But he has been the biggest advocate of the show that exists. Like, if we ask him of anything, like, he's always like, yes, we'll do it. He's very, very supportive. He comes on the show. He's probably the record holder of coming on the Jacks Rangers show, so buy it 100%.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's also a really friendly guy.
Big time.
He's been super accessible to us. Very welcoming. I mean, from the start, before I was even like a
from
show
day
guy,
one,
you run into him. Tom's fantastic.
Yeah, we love Tom here. So, hey guys, I really appreciate this. It's been a blast. We'll do it again soon. Obviously, once the season gets rolling, we're gonna be talking a lot about the Free Jacks. So, everybody out there, have a great week. Keep your heads up. Until next time, let freedom ring.